Hey guys, this is test 50 game 4. This is the alphabet soup game. It's an ordering game. We know this because they tell us that there are 3 spoonfuls that occur in a particular order. So I've laid out the diagram right here. I've laid out 2 others that I'll talk about later. Ignore those for now. I'll just focus on the top one for now. We got the 6 letters T, U, W, X, Y, and Z. Got a bunch of rules that I'll explain too. U is later than T, meaning that T is before U. Then they tell us that U is not later than X, meaning that U is before X, or they are equal, they are simultaneously. So I put that U is less than or equal to X. So since T is before U, we know that U is never first and T is never last. They tell us that W is before Y, so Y is never first and W is never last. They tell us that U is with either Y or Z, but not both. So I put down U, Y / Z, meaning U is with one of the two, but never with all 3. So this is essentially, a very bare bones main diagram for the game, but we can actually create multiple main diagrams to do a lot of the work for this game up front. So I create them based on the fact that T is before U. There are only 3 ways that can play out. Either we have something else on 1 and then have T and U on 2 and 3. We have something else on 2, T on 1, and U on 3. Or we have something else on 3, making T on 1 and U on 2. I chose T and U here because that's also involved with X, and we know that U has to be with either Y or Z. If I had chosen W before Y to create my multiple main diagrams, it would not have been as powerful for us. So that's why I use T and U. Now, there are a few additional inferences we can make here as well. Whenever U's on 3, we know that X has to go with it because U is always before or equal to X, and we certainly couldn't have X afterwards simply because there's not enough room. Now, we know that U has to go with either Y or Z as well, so since we know that U is either on 3 or 2, wherever it goes, we're going to have one of Y or Z with it. So here's Z/Y, here's Z/Y again for the second diagram, and then on the bottom diagram, we're going to have Z/Y on 2. So a couple of different main diagrams here, each one getting more limited as we go. Now we can make a couple of additional inferences also. Now for the top diagram, we know that we're going to, for space number 1, something's going to have to go there. We don't know exactly what it'll be. It'll be the other one of Y or Z perhaps, or it'll be W. We don't really know. Obviously Y couldn't actually be on 1, but we still got these guys left to place somewhere. In the second diagram, things are pretty open-ended. We don't really know how it's playing out. We know something's got to go on 2. Again, it's going to be W or it's going to be Y/Z. And then in the bottom diagram, we know that we have X going on either 2 or 3, but never 1 due to the fact that T is actually before X. So I'll just remind us that for this diagram, X never goes on 1. So this right here is essentially our main diagram for the game. We'll be doing a lot more work over the course of the game itself, but this is what we've got to play with up front. Again, W, Y/Z for the bottom diagram here is what we have left to place. So let's jump into the questions. Now, question number 18 is a typical orientation question. We're just going to take one rule at a time and apply that rule to all 5 choices, looking for violations. So we know that W has to go before Y. That's one of the very simple initial rules that we have here. Choice A violates that, having Y before W. So choice A can be eliminated. Choice C violates that as well, having W and Y simultaneously. So we can eliminate that as well. The other choices are good on that issue though, so we'll skip that rule, move on to another rule now. Now we know that we have to have T before U. Of course, that was what we used to create the multiple main diagrams here. So running through the choices, let's see what violates that. So T before U, scanning through, A is good on that. We already eliminated that anyway. B is good on that. D's not good on that. D has T and U simultaneously, so D is gone, and we're down to B and E, both of which are okay on this issue. So now I'll use the rule that U has to go before or equal to X and see if we're violating that anywhere. And we do see, in fact, that choice E has T and X simultaneous when we know that T has to go before X. So for that reason, E can be eliminated, and B is our answer for number 18. Next, number 19, if Y was the only letter in one of the spoonfuls. So obviously, that couldn't ever work in diagram number 1, where Y can't be on 1, and we already have other things on 2 and 3. So diagram number 1 is no good. For diagram number 2, we're going to have to put Y on 2, which would force W onto 1, since we know that W has to go before Y. And if Y is on 2, it obviously can't be on 3, therefore we're going to have Z on 3 in this diagram. On the bottom diagram, if y were alone, it wouldn't be able to go on 2, of course, where u is. It would have to go on diagram number 3, and then w essentially could be on either 1 or 2, x could be on 2 or 3. We don't really know, it's still open-ended. Anyway, the choices. What could be true? Could y be on 1? No, of course, y is never on 1, so a is gone. Could we have z on 1? Well, no, we have u with z on 3 or u with z on 2, but never alone. Z's never on 3, of course. Z's never on 1, of course, so for that reason, B is eliminated. Next, looking at C, T on 2, no T's on 1 in both of these diagrams, so C is gone. Next, looking at D, X on 2. Well, on the top diagram, X is on 3. In the bottom diagram, X could be on 2, though nothing is stopping that. So D is actually our answer, and then of course W on 3 never works because W is always before Y, leaving D. Next, number 20, if Z was in the first spoonful. So this could happen on any of the 3 diagrams. I'll just put it down, Z on 1, Z on 1, and Z on 1. Obviously, if Z is on 1, it can't be with U because U comes after T. Therefore, U and Y will have to be together in each of these diagrams. And in the bottom diagram where Y is on 2, we know this means that W has to be on 1 because W goes before Y, and that leaves X to go on 3, since we always have to have something filling each of the spoonfuls. In the second diagram, the middle one right here, Y on 3, obviously W is coming earlier. We have nothing currently occupying spoonful number 2 here, so W will have to go here since each spoonful has to be occupied by something. So the bottom diagram, all 3 diagrams actually are fleshed out completely except for the top one where W is either on 1 or 2. We don't know exactly where it's going. Anyway, what must be true? T on 2, no, T could be on 1 in either of the bottom diagrams, so A is gone. U on 3. On the top 2, that's the case, but in the bottom diagram, U is on 2, so B is not a must. Looking at C, W on 1, W could be on 2 in the middle diagram or the top diagram, so C is eliminated. And then, of course, D also, of course, W is not fixed to either 1 or 2. It could be on 1 in the top diagram or the bottom one, leaving E by elimination. And if you look at E, X on 3, X is on 3, X on 3, X on 3 happens in all of them, so E is our answer for number 20. Next, number 21, they're asking us what could be alone in the first spoonful. Well, obviously X is never on 1 period because it always has to come after T. You saw in the top diagrams X is on 3, in the bottom diagram X can never be on 1 because U is on 2, of course. So any choice containing X is automatically eliminated, getting rid of C and E. Of course, no choice includes Y or U because that would have been a little bit too obvious, but hey, you never know. Anyway, we've got T, TW, or TWZ. Let's test out Z and see if it works. So we actually saw back in question number 20 that we could have had Z alone on 1 in the top diagram. We could have had Z on 1 and then W on 2, with Y on 3, of course. This works perfectly fine. So we know that it's possible to have Z alone on 1 as we saw in question 20. Therefore, D is our answer to question number 21. Next, number 22, if T was in the second spoonful, so that's only the top diagram, the bottom 2 have T on 1, therefore the top diagram is the only relevant one here. What could be true? Exactly 2 things in this first spoonful? Well, yeah, that is possible. We could have W on 1 and Z on 1, and then have Y on 3. W and Z are exactly 2 things, therefore we know A is possible, and it's our answer to number 22. I will look at the rest, though. Exactly 3 on 1. No, there's nothing else that could go on 1. Y has to come with U if Z is not, and then we have our ordering rules as well. So no, it's not possible to have exactly 3 on the first spoonful. In the other 2 diagrams, the other 2 diagrams again, of course, are irrelevant. So B's gone. I'll look at C. Exactly 3 on 2. No, again, this is the fix. This is the only way that things could play out unless we put one of the other things on 2, but not both. So for that reason, no, C is not possible. Looking at D, exactly 1 on 3. No, we have 3 on 3. Exactly 2 on 3. No, we have 3 things on 3, leaving A for 22.